Well, welcome to 2025. This is my first one I've done since I've been on my little holidays jaunt. And Chris Robertshaw, who I've been keeping an eye on while I've been away, there's been so many things to talk about. I mean, really incredible. I mean, I know you've done a few other interviews about things, but where do you want to pick up? I mean, I know you did yourself a PAG thing, didn't you? Yourself talk about the state of the nation.
Yeah. It was entitled "What's Wrong with Government." You know, I'm cursed with this issue about living with the problem of trying to get reform in our system.
And let's face it, 10 years ago you were dealing with this, right? In
Absolutely. I was commissioned by the Chief Minister to identify what needed to be done. I spent 9 months on it as a minister. I put it to the Council of Ministers, and the Council of Ministers said no. Well, because they said no then, we still have the same problems. And I think the issues, the problems we've got are becoming more and more obvious to more and more people. And what happened as a result of that PAG meeting, which was very well attended and well supported, the principal ideas, people were listening very carefully, was that as an outshot of that meeting, we formed a group who are going to commit between now and the next election to explaining, outlining, articulating what we think is wrong with our system and how we need to refine it and improve it. It is not just simply a question of, well, who do we elect next time? It's a question of, well, who do we elect and how do we refine and improve our system to deal with the shortfalls and the weaknesses that exist. And it's too difficult in one interview, Paul, to go through it all. But could I possibly identify... Yeah,
but I was going to say, Alistair Ramsey did quite an interesting bit, didn't he, on this whole thing about... Because he's seen it from both sides, of course.
Well, Alistair's pretty well on the same page as myself. I think Alistair started off recognising the issues as well. Do we need a directly elected Chief Minister? But I think he's moved on, and where he's moved on to is very, very close to what the team that we're forming is thinking. And I think for the sake of this podcast, if we could just go through the key issues, that would be great. It's awful to state that actually, by the time we get to 2031, and I'm now referring to this year's budget forecast, which takes us up to 2031, that our government will have run its budget every year on a deficit for 2 decades. So that's a long time.
This is taking money out of the reserves, basically.
Yeah, to balance the books.
Yeah.
And there's always a reason and there's always an excuse. But what we're doing is we're eating away into our reserves, despite what is being said.
Well, it's gone to health, hasn't it? That's what the normal word is, isn't it?
That's what Alex Allinson wants everybody to believe, because and I think I've said this in public already, is that I was really cross with the way he adopted a narrative about 2 weeks prior to the election, saying, "You don't worry, the reserves are safe with us, don't worry, the pensions are fine, and don't worry, everything will be all right in that respect." And then afterwards, after the budget was announced and became promulgated, a couple of weeks after that, he said, you know, this is again Alex Allinson, he said, the health service has really got to start living within its budget. And I was almost sort of screaming at the radio, because it's not just health, it's the whole of government that's not living within its budget. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a bit hypocritical for the Treasury Minister, who's in charge of budgets, blaming everything on health. What he was actually doing, he was trying to hide the fact that government as a whole wasn't living within its budget. But let's blame health, and let's persuade everybody that the tax increases that we want to bring in are all to do with health. It's not. It's to do with the fact, in part it is, yes, of course, but it's also to do with the fact that we have a bloated government, and confidence and trust in the government is fading away.
10 years ago, literally to the day, yesterday, Alan Bell was saying the same thing about government and how he was exasperated in the size of it and trying to get it under control. 10 years on, nothing has changed.
Which is why I was appointed as the first Minister of Policy and Reform.
How'd that go?
They didn't. Ministers didn't like it. They were cosy and comfortable. They were having the ego stroke. The CEOs didn't like it because they didn't want their world disrupted. We're still in that world.
But there were some cutbacks. I mean, I remember doing various interviews like with Duran Watson, who was Home Affairs, and they were cutting back police, they were cutting back all these sort of things in numbers, because we had been on such a good wicket up until then. But the VAT changes were really being felt at that stage, weren't they, 10 years ago?
Yes, we did cut back. We cut back of that 200 million that we got hit with at the beginning of towards the beginning of the administration. We recovered 125 million. It was a very, very tough time. But quietly and insidiously, the size of government crept back, and we still have this huge shortfall every year, and foolishly using our reserves to cover the deficit rather than deal with the fundamental problem. So
so what are you going to do about it? You're going to
well, no, hang on a second. Let's just go through the 4 points that I made at the PAG meeting. The second is our democracy is starting to fail, and I'll just try and touch on that momentarily, because it's quite a big discussion. This, we can't capture it now, but when the ministerial system came in 1986, and I was quite a young man then, and I remember at the time thinking, well, there's a recognition that this is a start of a process, but it has to carry on being refined. It never was. Once the ministerial system came in, it stayed where it was because it was too comfortable for the ministers. It was too comfortable for the departmental system, and slowly and insidiously, the departmental system has, as it were, gained control of our parliamentary process, and as it's got more powerful, it's become less and less attuned to public opinion, and public opinion now feels it's divorced from the political process. So there's 2 points. But government has become bloated and cannot live within its budget, and it's less and less attuned to the will of the people.
You haven't mentioned silo mentality yet, but that's where you normally end up with that.
Well, you've mentioned it for me, because we've
it's true though, but you've gone about it forever, right? Well, everyone's got vested interest in their own departments. There's not overall,
precisely, but it's the power of the departments.
The civil servants again, are we, or ministers, or combination?
No, it's the way. And what I should explain is the team that's forming around the idea of helping people to understand what the fundamental problems are. One of the things we've decided to do is to introduce a website, a Facebook account, email address. We're going to go around the island and introduce public meetings and invite people to come along and talk about the issues and have them understand what the fundamental problems are.
Are these potential people who want to stand for MHKs and things?
No, it's the general. The general public are being asked in this endeavour to understand what the issues are and how we can resolve them. So yes, it's part communicating with candidates in the next election, but also the general public, to give people a feeling of hope that we can find a way forward with this, so that people can feel engaged again, and that they will trust that the government will start putting its act together. The third point that was raised at I raised at the PAG meeting was our inability to introduce high quality, high level, cross departmental strategic thinking. We haven't got that, and it's very, very damaging, and we have to be able to introduce that as well. And the fourth point is our complete inability to deal with high cost major project work almost on every occasion now in recent years, regardless of which administration it was. these big projects have been brought forward and have fallen down or massively overspent. Or
I know this is what I'm trying to think of anything that's actually come in budget, but I mean, there must be little ones there somewhere. But certainly the big ticket stuff.
If they're little, then it's a different issue.
The big ticket stuff has not been.
It's been a disaster. It's been a disaster. Well, I mean, one of the things that didn't enjoy a particularly high profile was when DOI brought in its harbour strategy and was passed in Tynwald as being supported by its consultants, when in fact a policy review committee, of which I was part, did a review of it, only to find that no, it's the DOI's consultants did not agree with what was being proposed. Tynwald passed a vote to spend the £80 million. Subsequently, when our report came out, that £80 million expenditure was quietly, that report proposal that was passed through Tynwald was quietly put in the bottom drawer somewhere in DOI and lost. But that was just one of a whole range. We know full well that was the ferry terminal. I don't want to go into too much detail because most people know. Yeah, let's accept the fact that most people know that these projects...
Let's do the ferry terminal, because I mean, there's still no final figure yet. So there's not
exactly.
Anything.
Well, it was going to be about 29 million. Well,
was it that? I thought it was even lower at one stage.
It might have been, but
there's so many numbers banded around, but it constantly went over. Didn't it? Basically.
Well, it's still not fixed because there's still, I believe, there's still legal discussions going on about liability between contractors, etc. And I think the figure's going to be somewhere north of 100 million. And then we've got this court case, haven't we, about Lord Street going on with, I think it's called Sondika. 3 times now, government has tried to get a major project in Lord Street and failed miserably 3 times. And analysis of why it's going wrong sort of leads you back to, well, how do we really deal with our major projects? So these are the 4 issues that the team that's being formed.
Is your team... known, or is this something you're working on? Is there going to be a big announcement made, or what?
Well, we'd like to announce through you when we launch, if we may.
Sure,
we'd like to announce the website when it's open, so people can go to it and understand more about what we're saying.
But back to telling people what these things, which is great. But everyone's now focused on this next election almost already, isn't it? It's quite, who's going to stand? Back to Alistair Ramsey, he's saying people stand on these sort of local issues and they get thrust into national issues, which they never got a mandate for. I mean, we could talk about the 20 mile an hour speed limit thing, although Anne Corlett did propose it to the last Tynwald. Suddenly that caused all sorts of eruptions because people don't necessarily want these things to happen. How do you deal with all that sort of stuff?
Well, what we're doing at the moment is we're doing deep analysis of the concept of referenda. And so the democratic process continues right through the administration.
We're going Swiss, are we, then? Because they referendum everyone on anything important.
Well, we're looking at the Swiss system, but we're identifying elements of it that can be simplified and attuned to our system of government. And part of our proposal will be that it grants the Chief Minister new powers to decide from his or her office that actually that issue or this issue needs to be subject to referendum.
But we have public consultations nearly on everything, but it doesn't necessarily matter what that comes back with. I mean, one of them was the gaiety in drinking, right? Now, I was all for, don't get me wrong, I'm all for having a drink in your seat, but it came back, there was more people against allowing that. But it still went through. So what is the point of public referendum? And in that sense, the going out to the public for their thoughts.
Well, the consultation process has become warped and discredited. Part of the reason for that is that they're written by the very people, the very department that wants a particular thing to happen. So it's already biased before it starts. Yeah. And in the case of the 20 mile an hour issue, apparently we're getting, as I understand it, we're getting the consultation sometime after the story is that some of this equipment has already been
couldn't have been handled any worse. I mean, I was away from afar reading about it.
Right, but okay, let's take that very important point. It couldn't have been handled worse. Paul, that's how arrogant the departments have got. Do you know the departments are now so powerful that they hold the political process in contempt. And I could spend a long time explaining to you how that is happening, how the departmental process has now overwhelmed the parliamentary process. So we need to adjust that, and that'll be described and in our meetings around the island and on the website, and people can criticise what we're saying and ask us questions about it. And the group of people involved is growing. What is important for me to say, it is not a political party. That's not the issue. The issue is it's almost a society, really, looking towards good governance in the Isle of Man to ensure that we breathe health and oxygen back into our democratic process, that our strategic process is much improved, that the departments are kept and the minister is kept in each department, but they're much more aligned to operational duties and much more accountable to the public for them. Because right now, not only are the departments controlling, but they're also clumsy conglomerates where the CEO, as it were, can almost move away when things start going wrong. In fact, the easiest thing for a CEO is for the minister to be sacked and another one brought in. People who don't know or understand the situation, or understand the way our system is currently not performing well, think that, oh well, we've replaced a minister, we've sorted the problem. No, the department still exists, and that the shining example of that, of course, is that DOI, I think, have had 5 ministers, I think.
Is it?
Of recently, one way or the other. Where's it got us? Well, the answer's not very far.
Yeah, but, okay, so where you laying the blame back in the civil service, are you then? Because it's the Lord Humphrey thing, isn't it? They stay, ministers can rotate whenever. The minister takes the flak, they spout out the policy, which may not even be anything to do with them. But if anything goes wrong, it's the minister who disappears, but the civil servants go on and on and on. And
the intention is not to condemn the civil service, because there are lots of good people working in government doing their damnedest.
I've had to deal with this firsthand with my issues. Remember that whole slap thing? No one's been chastised. They held information back. They wouldn't release it. Mm-hmm. Everything in their powers not to release that. It was toned down information. I've got to live with that, and yet I'm getting all the flack. The civil servants just roll on, and nothing is done about it.
Well, you're making my argument for me quite eloquently here. We mustn't condemn individuals. What we must condemn is...
It's hard not to sometimes.
Yeah, of course it is. Is the controlling system which we've allowed to build. Oh, look, remember this. Back to 1986, when the ministerial system came in, it came in also in Jersey, it came in Guernsey. Those two crown dependencies have looked at their ministerial system, said, oh, this isn't quite right here. The Jersey have moved forward into a unified system, and Guernsey, as it were, almost moved back a little bit towards the board system. And part of this team that we're bringing together, and the website, etc., will explain is what those crown dependencies have done and what we haven't done. We've just steamed on with this original layout, and it's now providing the ability for the bureaucracy, the system, to abuse the democracy, to deny us high-level strategic thinking.
All the time the civil service gets bigger and bigger. The one thing about Jersey, and we've mentioned before, they brought this guy in he must be on some sort of mission, which has been given, but I mean almost like to way that he's reducing the head count massively, or it appears to be anyway, what I'm reading about it. Is that what's not needed here? Certainly
within our proposals will be an open door, as it were, to making our departments much more efficient and much more focused on operational requirements, making them much slimmer, in other words. So the answer is yes, absolutely. Yeah. But a unified government would allow various functions to be removed from the departments to simplify them. Some might be partially outsourced, some with subsidies, some may be recreated under a simplified board system and answerable direct to Tynwald. What will be very important in all of this is to make sure that the overwhelming vote of the departments through the Council of Ministers can no longer dominate Tynwald, which it's doing at the moment. I mean, where I would ask Alistair to refine his thinking is where he says, oh, well, the Council of Ministers are overpowerful. Well, that's not what it is. It's the departments and the way the system of apportioning ministers and departmental members permits and allows that. So it's the political process.
Yeah, they block vote, don't they? Let's face it.
Under the proposals, once they come out here, the refining of that system will make it a lot more difficult for the departments to dominate Tynwald to the extent that they do.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't looked like that to the outsiders. It seems like the block vote just holds them steady most of the time.
Well, it crushes. I mean, to such an extent, I would put it to you, Paul, that I think some members have actually just given up because there's no point in trying to get an alternative view over, because they know before they even...
Isn't that the situation we're in? There's this total feeling that we're in a mess, and it's spiralling downwards at the minute. So there's nobody's coming to sort it out.
This has existed for years, and as I say, I'm cursed, as it were, to know, because of my job at the time, I know what to do. And I've been terribly frustrated watching the situation progressively deteriorate, us running further into debt, our democracy failing, our inability to enable high-level, really good quality strategic thinking for the future of the Isle of Man. It's not in existence at the moment because the operating departments are carrying responsibilities, and it's no disrespect to them, that they aren't able to do, and yet they are required to deliver on it, and that's where things go wrong.
You done your list?
Yeah,
we'll wrap this one. We're going to do more, by the way. We're definitely going to have more regular basis chat, because I think it's just...
This is, let me put it this way, this is a very important period now, between now and the next election. If we can't get the process understood and right by the next election, I think we're in really, really serious trouble. I've got 5 grandsons, and I want to see the Isle of Man succeed. And so do lots and lots of other people.
To bring back that phrase where the Isle of Man can, you can in the Isle of Man, and not, which is obviously
not if the departments say you can't.
Okay. Well, nice to see you again. We've got lots to talk about.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
You still got
very casual, aren't I?
You still got your Aussie shirt on.
It literally is. I'm only just off the plane.
It's a hard life.
It is. Well, someone's got to do it. But thank you very much, Chris. And we always appreciate feedback. And we're working in different studios, sort of.
Well, we'll launch this through you if we may.
Absolutely. When do you think that's going to be?
As soon as possible. I mean, it really is. Yeah. We're writing.
And you'll name the names of people that are involved and all that sort of thing. It'll all be public, will it? Or is it just going to be a bit more? Some people can't be announced.
Well, it's a little difficult to announce who's involved because there are people joining, coming on board.
But you're the figurehead then?
I'm the enabler, if you like. I mean, there's some really good people beavering away now.
Okay, let's leave it on this side. We're doing what we're doing because we all got passion for the Isle of Man. How's that? I mean, we'll be doing this,
Correct.
If you just go, it would go. But anyway, so much more to talk about.
Great.
Stay tuned.
Thanks, Paul.